Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. Joining me today, it's our usual lineup of Michael McCubs and Henry Hill. McCubs, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, Dukes. Not too bad. As usual, nothing to report on here. Just, getting through the days, getting through the weeks.
The increasingly short days. We're going to be back in the pub before too long.
Hopefully, yeah.
You've seen the roadmap to how to get us out of this hell where, time just doesn't seem to pass. It's going to get better in the UK, everyone watching from the UK. Welcome to all our viewers from around the world as well. And we've got Henry Hill for you as well. Henry, how are you on this Thursday?
Yeah, got my flamenco shirt on, so dreaming of all those holidays, which, I probably won't ever actually go on, but I feel like everyone's like, oh, this is it, we're all going to get out and go places, but they still cost money, they're still difficult. But yes, dreaming of going away. Let's make it happen.
Flamengo would be quite a trip. We should do a Continental Club away days. That'd be absolutely awesome. Anyway, let's get on to the main topic of today, because we are talking about the most cursed club in Europe. Because, it feels a little bit Halloween-y vibes from FD from about 2017. But that's because Brave Bus 24 said, can Atleti win the Champions League with the way they play? So, of course, this week we saw Atletico Madrid lose their home leg of their last 16 tie against Chelsea, 1-0 thanks to that magnificent Olivier Giroud goal. And despite putting in despite being top of La Liga just about, they put in a pretty limp display against the Blues. And with their league season faltering and now them up against it in the Champions League, we want to discuss the most cursed clubs in Europe. And Henry, we're going to kick off with Atletico Madrid because their recent form hasn't been great.
Yeah, they were 8 points clear after 21 games, weren't they, on the 31st of January, having won 15 of their previous 16 games at that point. I think they conceded like 8 goals in that period. It was pretty crazy just how consistent their defence is being. But they've only picked up 5 points from a possible 12 since the start of February, and they're now just 3 points ahead of Real Madrid, albeit they do have a game in hand over them. But yeah, draw to Levante, then they lost to Levante despite having 28 shots on goal, and another draw of Celta Vigo where I think they gave up the leads maybe once in that game. So yeah, it's kind of been faltering a little bit, and they've been struggling to get their results over the line. Real Madrid, they've been scraping wins, haven't they? 4 in a row, scoring 7 and conceding just 1, and it is turning into a bit of a proper title race. Although I mean, last night was an example of that for Real Madrid, wasn't it? Sorry, we shoot this on the Thursday. That against Atalanta, sort of backs against the wall, scraped that 1-0 victory despite being against 10 men. The only thing that I'd give kind of in Atletico's favour is just sort of the lack of apparent squad depth in that Real Madrid side. I mean, their bench, I think I saw a tweet which said their bench looked like...
It was awful.
It looked like something out of like a Pro Evolution Soccer kind of older version of the game where they sort of just make up a load of... I mean, I was quite surprised to see that. But anyway, so Real Madrid are back in it, which is exciting. And also their Champions League form has been pretty awful too. They've only scored 7 goals in 6 group games, the lowest of all the sides in the competition. And Suarez has yet to contribute a goal in the competition, which is really quite surprising to read that, really. And he failed to get a shot on target against Chelsea on Tuesday. I mean, they failed to get a target at all against Chelsea. It was really, really disappointing display. Quite an attacking side too, if you consider that I think Marcos Llorente and Thomas Lemar were playing in the wing-back positions. Had Rudiger and Christensen. They're not. I wouldn't say they're like an elite world-class centre-back pairing. And there was a real opportunity there to kind of go out and grab this last 16 tie by the scruff of the neck, and they've completely missed that. I mean, they created 0.6 expected goals versus Chelsea's 1.1. And they've only won 2 of their 7 games in the competition this year, so it's not looking good for them. And actually, I think one of the reasons that they have been suffering is the loss of Kieran Trippier, which might come as like a surprise to a lot of people. But Trippier, he's really become a massively influential part of Diego Simeone's defence, hasn't he? And fair play to him too. I think he actually, prior to this FA ban, which has been put on him for betting regulations, he was leading the team for progressive passes, certainly up the pitch. He had an XG goal chain of 0.5, which meant that every other goal which they're scoring, he's playing like an influential role within that, because he really links the defence and attack at Atletico. And it's no coincidence to see that they're conceding more in his absence, and because also he think he's currently putting up something like 6 defensive actions per game, which is a huge and a massive improvement from last season as well. And one of Simeone's strengths is he does alter his side to fit the best players that he's got there. And I think he identified how well Trippier performed last season at the right wing-back position, and he's really elevated this game here because he went from a flat back 4 to a back 5, and it's done really well for him there. So yeah, they are missing Trippier, and I think if they are looking to get back on track, I think that ban comes to an end in the next few weeks, and they'll be really looking forward to him coming back because, like I said, they've had a few really bad results, and this game against Chelsea, no different, which I think had to take place in Romania due to travel restrictions. So we'll see how the return leg goes there. But if we go back to Simeone, I mean, prior to his arrival, they'd won 1 trophy in 14 years. That's the 2010 Europa League, and they'd spent 2 years in the second tier in that time. Obviously, they've won the league under him. They've reached 2 UCL finals, losing to Real Madrid on both those occasions. I remember that. I don't know if you guys remember watching those, but I remember the first one, that Ramos goal was devastating. I've got a real soft spot for Atletico, I think, ever since like discovering Aguero on FIFA all those years ago. But it's just, that last minute header from Ramos was just devastating. And it's always difficult to see because they're the kind of team that do well over 2 legs, but in like a 1 game shootout, it's really hard to like see Atletico always getting the better of an opposition. That's in my opinion anyway. I think they're much suited to that longer season grind. I think they will win the league title this year, but it looks like that wait for that Champions League trophy, which I think would really sort of complete Simeone's work at the club, I think that's going to have to go on this year. But, you know, they are looking like a much more attacking side this year. 5th for shots per game, 4th for expected goals in La Liga. Suarez is obviously, we've talked about him enough on this channel, he's worked miracles. But yeah, they are kind of always the bridesmaid, never the bride a little bit, Atletico Madrid, aren't they? But I think if you consider that there was one point in history where they weren't, there was 2 main clubs in Spain and they were kind of floating on the periphery, I think in the 2nd division only not too long ago. The fact that they are a giant of the game now, I think that is obviously a great sign. They just need that trophy and silverware to kind of back up those achievements, don't they?
Yeah, I think you're so right. They've done really well to establish themselves very much in that top 3 and occasionally get into the top 2 as well, winning that title as well. It just feels like this year, when they were so far ahead in La Liga with Real Madrid in disarray, with Barcelona in disarray, this was such a good opportunity. And in the last few weeks, they've kind of let that slip and then put in a really limp display in the Champions League and left it all to do it in Stamford Bridge, where Chelsea have looked really solid defensively. Like, I don't think they've set anything alight with their attacking play so far, but they don't look like they're going to concede many goals at the moment, and their counter press against Atletico Madrid, keeping them in their own half actually was really, really impressive on Tuesday night. So it does feel like, as you say, that they do feel slightly cursed in the Champions League and towards the end of this season, but hopefully they can get it together and finish the season as they should do, because I think they have been the best side in Spain so far, and it'd be a nightmare really if Real Madrid won it, considering how inconsistent they've been and with their lack of flair this year in particular, albeit they have had a lot of injuries. So that's Atletico Madrid, one cursed team down. But McCubs, we're going to go over to Germany for the next one. A bit more of a historical angle on Bayer Leverkusen. Yeah,
I mean, talk about curse, kind of Bayer Leverkusen in the kind of late 90s, early 2000s really were. And I think most of our fans will know about that infamous 2001-2 campaign. They finished runners-up in the Bundesliga, in the German Cup and the Champions League. The latter 2 games came just 3 days apart. So yeah, pretty unique feat there from a very talented side. In an era when the Bundesliga in particular was very winnable. I think kind of in that, kind of following that in the kind of latter stages, or at least in the kind of mid to late 2000s, you had teams like Werder Bremen win the Bundesliga, Stuttgart, Wolfsburg. So yeah, it really isn't the kind of Bayern, it wasn't the Bayern dominated league that it is today. At least Bayern was still dominant financially, but there are a number of seasons when they were very much beaten to the post. And yeah, Bayer Leverkusen just continually fell short over the previous 4 years to that 2002 season. They finished second 3 times. In 1997, they did so by 2 points. In 1999, they were beaten a lot more comprehensively. They were 15 points off the top spot, but then lost on goal difference in 2000. And in that campaign, they only needed a draw on the final day of the season. And then Michael Ballack, obviously their kind of talisman, scored an OG, which handed the title to Borussia Dortmund. So So yeah, absolutely brutal. So then fast forward to 2002, like I was saying, they went 1-0 up against Schalke in the DFB Pokal final, lost that 4-2. And then obviously that very famous final against Real Madrid at Hampden Park in the Champions League, capped off what was an excellent European campaign for them. They'd beaten Barcelona, they'd beaten Juventus, they'd beaten Liverpool, they'd beaten a particularly strong Man United side in the semi-finals as well. And obviously that Zidane goal kind of put them to the sword. And then to make matters worse, Michael Ballack then got to got Germany to the World Cup final that summer and they lost to Brazil. And I think 5 Bayer Leverkusen players were in that German side as well. So yeah, that was kind of the end of an era for Leverkusen, because that summer, Zé Roberto and Michael Ballack went to Bayern Munich. I think it was either the following summer or the summer after. Lucio then went to Bayern Munich as well. Obviously, Lucio, World Cup winner, and would go on to win the Champions League under Jose Mourinho at Inter Milan as well. So real world-class talents who then left Leverkusen for Bayern. So that really spelled the end of Leverkusen being a serious challenger in that era, and they've never really recovered from it, to be honest. Despite having, getting through a number of quality players, developing kind of world-class talents, having bought them on the cheap and then selling them on, having been managed by some very good coaches as well. So to kind of go through, Berbatov was part of that era as well, eventually left for Tottenham, didn't he? They've had players like Arturo Vidal, who was sold to Juventus for about 11 million, I think it was in 2011 or 2012. Çalhanoğlu, who was kind of had a difficult time at AC Milan, but in the last year has really shown his worth. He really made a name for himself at Leverkusen, didn't he? Heung-Min Son, Julian Brandt, Kai Havertz. Just goes to show kind of what a selling club they are, and how I think, opportunities for silverware are always quite fleeting at Leverkusen because of that kind of business model that they have. They've had managers like Jupp Heynckes, who I think did get them to second in 2011. Roger Schmidt as well, Peter Bosch obviously. So they've always had a lot of talent on the field and in the dugout. But yeah, silverware just continues to evade them. So since 2002, they finished in the top 4 7 times, 5th 5 times in the Bully. So you often have kind of missed out narrowly on Champions League qualification. They've never progressed past the UEFA Cup or Europa League quarter-final. Since 2002 as well, they've never made it past the Champions League last 16. They finished runners-up twice in the DFB Pokal, losing 1-0 to an Ozil-inspired Werder Bremen in 2009, and then were thrashed by Bayern Munich last year, 4-2. And then even this season, they've fallen short as well. They were first on the 16th of December. They were unbeaten in the league. They've won 2 and lost 5 of their last 10 games since. So they've dropped to 5th now. They're 5 points behind 4th place Frankfurt and 12 behind Bayern at the top of the table. Leverkusen fans, I think, will still be fairly confident that they can get back into that Champions League place. But yeah, I think it just goes to show how difficult it can be for Leverkusen. They've produced some really entertaining teams over the years, but they've never looked really like a team that can challenge consistently for silverware. Partly because they often sell off their best players, and partly because they just have a terrible record in finals. So their last piece of silverware was the DFB Pokal back in 1993. So they haven't won a major trophy since before I was born, just to put that into perspective. They also won a UEFA Cup in 1988, so that was, I guess, a bit of a glory era for them in that respect. But yeah, so there's a reason why they're called Leverkusen. They just they just never win.
It's certainly quite a storied past in terms of falling at the final hurdle, and you feel like they've got a lot of talent in their squad at the moment, in Moussa Diaby, Florian Wirtz, Lucas Alario, Edmund Tapsoba at the back as well, and these are the players that they'll be making money on in the next few years as well. But it's just, as good a reputation it is to be a talent developer, I bet Leverkusen fans will just want to get over the line in some competition. And after consistently qualifying for the Champions League or Europa League since 2002, make a dent in it, have a little run, but it just hasn't quite materialised. It's quite frustrating. So let's park Leverkusen back in Germany, back with their sort of underachievement, and go over to England, because a lot of people would probably think we'd talk about Arsenal in this section. I mean, it's coming up to 18 years since they last won a league title. But then you remember, their North London rivals Spurs haven't won a league title in 60 years this year. And obviously, their recent history has been pretty solid under Pochettino. He saw a marked improvement in their side. Prior to his appointment in May 2014, there was just 3 top 4 finishes since 1990, and their results under him were so much better. 5th, 3rd, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and obviously he was sacked when they were in 14th the year after reaching that Champions League final. Of course, he's also reached 2 FA Cup semi-finals. Couldn't quite get over the line, but it seemed like there was the beginnings of a really special team. And they made some monster inroads in the Champions League in that time, of course, winning that final, but also beating a serious calibre of opposition as well. They beat Real Madrid, they beat Dortmund 4 times in his tenure. They kept on playing Dortmund in the Champions League under him. They also beat Inter Milan, Man City and Ajax in the Champions League as well. And despite finishing second in 2016-17 with 86 points, which bear in mind, this was before Pep Guardiola really started going at Man City. This is before Jurgen Klopp created that incredible Liverpool team. 86 points was a really impressive tally. I think that's nothing to be sniffed at. Man United had won titles with less than that. I think Arsenal had won titles with less than that. But they still finished 6 points behind Chelsea. That was that Conte year where, he settled on that new formation. The Premier League hadn't really seen it a lot recently, and they just sort of smoked the league from about November time. But the year before was actually, I feel like, the bigger opportunity, because they were only 5 points behind Leicester with 4 games to go, and they were in magnificent form. They'd won 10 of their previous 13 games, but they drew 2 and lost 2 of their final 4 games to finish third. 11 points behind Leicester and Arsenal, who managed to sneak into second as well. And, the gap between Arsenal and Leicester actually ended up being quite large that year. Leicester won comfortably despite finishing with such a low points tally. But Spurs, if they'd won those final 4 games, who knows what could have happened. If they kept on winning those games, the pressure might have built. So I feel like that was a massive opportunity. But if you're looking at their whole recent history, as everyone knows, it gets talked about all the time. They haven't won a trophy since 2008, which is their only trophy this century. And whilst even Arsenal have been pretty poor since about 2008, you'd probably say, when they consistently sold their best players whilst adapting to a new stadium, they've won 4 FA Cups since 2008. So it just goes to show the sort of dearth of opportunities in silverware on the white side of North London. Obviously, they've got that Carabao Cup final on the 25th of April, but they're against Man City, who have just been absolutely imperious in the last couple of months. Is it 19 wins in a row in all competitions? Just absolutely ridiculous. They're on course to break their record that they set in 17-18 for consecutive wins. And their league form, Spurs, has been appalling. Has been absolutely appalling. There's no getting away from it. They were first on the 6th of December, having lost just 1 of their opening 11 games, which was their opening game against Everton. But they've only won 3 of their last 13 games to slip to 9th, 23 points behind Man City in first. And everyone on this channel in the sort of EFD community thinks I hate Jose Mourinho for some reason. I don't hate Mourinho. I just think he was the wrong appointment at the time. Yeah. And after really seemingly getting something going in the early part of the season, there's no getting away from their form recently in the league. They're obviously much better in the Europa League against Austrian opposition this week, and the week before that has been really, really damaging. So it feels like Spurs hired Mourinho to try and win a trophy. They've got an opportunity on the 25th of April, but they don't actually look any closer to, unless they go all the way in the Europa League. And their league form is even worse than when Pochettino was in charge. And you just feel like if Pochettino had been backed the way Mourinho was, I don't think they'd be in this position right now. They just wouldn't be 9th in the league, in my personal opinion.
Definitely not.
So that's Spurs, pretty cursed as well. But let's move on to some other shouts, because Henry, you suggested Benfica when we were having a chat about this in the WhatsApp group yesterday, because their recent past in the European competition has been really damaging, and it all comes about because of a sort of voodoo freaky curse. Isn't that right?
I think the definition of a cursed football club, I think Benfica pretty much take the biscuit, don't they? I mean, manager Bela Gutmann took them to 2 Portuguese titles and 2 European Cups between 1959 and 1962. And here's where it gets very spooky, because when he was refused a pay rise, he cursed the club, saying, "Not in 100 years from now will Benfica ever be European champion." And sure enough, they've reached 8 finals, European finals, 5 in the European Cup and 3 in the UEFA Cup/Europa League, and they've lost them all. I mean, most recently in 2013, they lost on penalties to Sevilla, the year after losing 2-1 to Chelsea thanks to that last minute Ivanovic video. I think that was Cardoza up front for them during that time. But yeah, that is genuinely like a voodoo, isn't it? But I certainly don't think it's going to get any easier for them to break that curse at the moment. whether or not they'll get through against Arsenal. I think it's 1-1 at the moment. We'll see. But I also like the Mexico one. You know, the fact that they've not got past the last 16 of the World Cup since 1994. They've got to the last 16 every single year, and they apparently in Mexico it's like a big running joke that they're cursing that. And then I think Nigeria, because they always draw Argentina in the World Cup group stages as well. So I like those ones as well. But yeah, I think, you know, we're looking at like a genuine curse. Benfica really, maybe they need an exorcism or something like that, because it looks like they're struggling big time.
They really do. They really do. I mean, it's going to be a long, long time before that 100 years is over. So they'll be looking to wipe that curse away for the short term at least. McCubs, have you got any other shouts? I mean, Newcastle have had a pretty difficult time recently.
Yeah, they've not won a trophy for 52 years, have they? They haven't won a league since like the 1920s, is it? Forgive me if I'm wrong on that. Yeah, I think Juve as well, in terms of obviously they've been, you know, all powerful in Serie A for the last 10 years at least. And pretty dominant throughout their history. But they've made last 5 Champions League finals they've lost every single one. And of the 9 Champions League finals they've made, they've only won 2 in their history.
It's not a good record.
Yeah, it's pretty bad considering I was writing a script about the Champions League, which may be on the channel now. But yeah, like compare Juventus with, like, say, Real Madrid. So Real Madrid have won 13 Champions Leagues or / European Cups. They made 16 finals, so they've only lost 3 of the 16 finals they've made. Whereas Juventus 9 finals and lost 7. It's really damning, and I think it's kind of like a mixture of kind of bad luck of coming up against, you know, amazing Barcelona and Real Madrid teams, and then just kind of bottling it slightly in other finals. So Juve, in terms of like the top prize, European Cup, I think they're kind of out on their own in that sense. Benfica do give them a run for their money, though.
Absolutely, yeah. Benfica's, I think, the best shout, to be honest. But there's a couple of other teams in Italy that we could possibly mention. I mean, Roma haven't won a trophy since 2007-8. They finished in the top 3 6 times since then, and twice a runner-up in the Coppa Italia without getting their hands on another trophy, which is quite a bleak run for a club of that stature. Obviously got thrashed by Lazio earlier in the season, but looks like they're in the hunt for top 4 once again, but without really ever pushing on. They've obviously had a lot of changes off the pitch in recent years. And Fiorentina as well, one of the best teams in the early 2000s. They won 2 Coppa Italias in 1996 and 2001. They're slowly slipping down the table as well. And it looks like Milenkovic and Castrovilli and players like that might follow Chiesa out the door this summer. So it's going to be difficult for Fiorentina. But guys, that's our rundown of cursed clubs in Europe. What did you guys think of it? Did we miss anyone out? I'm sure we did. Get them in the comments down below. And let's move on to our big match preview. So this weekend we could have talked about Real Madrid Real Sociedad, but seeing that's taking place on Monday, it's kind of a long time to wait. It's not really the big match preview of this weekend. It's also Roma versus Milan, but we've talked a lot about Serie A recently, and Marseille versus Lyon. But we want to cover the biggest clash in the Bundesliga this weekend, which is RB Leipzig versus Gladbach at Saturday at 5:30 p.m. And McCubs, because of RB Leipzig's recent form, like La Liga, we might have a little title race.
Yeah, very much so. And unlike La Liga, where I think Atleti are still hot favourites and would have to mess up still quite badly in order to lose it, it's pretty tight in Germany. Leipzig were, have always been, well, in the last few months at least, have been the kind of leader of the chasing pack. But they were 7 points behind Bayern on the 23rd of January. And when there's a gap like that with Bayern at the top, it generally does not slip. And that was following a 3-2 defeat away to Mainz, who also beat Mönchengladbach last weekend, didn't they? So we'll get onto that in a bit, I'm sure. But yeah, it looked like the title was done and dusted. But since then, Leipzig won all 4 of their games. Some impressive performances in there, as well as particularly against Hertha Berlin on the weekend. Thought they were particularly good in that game. They've scored 9 and conceded just 1 on that run as well. So defensively, they've been pretty sound. Which is pretty good for Leipzig, but I know we've seen them, especially in the Champions League this season, get found out a little bit defensively. But in the league, they've been very, very tight. And in that time, Bayern have dropped 5 points in just 2 games. Obviously, that 3-3 draw with Arminia, which again showed their defensive frailties, and then that 2-1 loss to Frankfurt. The gap at the top is now just 2 points. The title race is very much on. But Leipzig do face a tough run from now. So I think this will really be the make or break of them. Obviously, they've already lost 2-0 to Liverpool in the Champions League. You'd expect Liverpool to get the job done in the second leg. But obviously they've got Gladbach this weekend, then they've got Wolfsburg, who've been flying high unexpectedly this season, and they've got Freiburg, who are in ninth, Frankfurt again, another massively informed team, the informed team of the Bully, and then Arminia Bielefeld as well, and then Bayern. So yeah, there aren't too many gimmies in that, and I think they'll have to at least get 4 points, I think, from those Wolfsburg and Frankfurt games in order to still be keeping the pace with Bayern by the time they face them, because I know Bayern have been pretty poor of late, but it doesn't take long for them to kick back into gear, and I expect they will do so in the next week or two. But all things considered, though, like Leipzig are they're in a very good position. They're in a better position than they were last year, marginally. They've won one more game, conceded 7 fewer goals, and have 2 more points than at this stage last season, which is pretty impressive given how kind of tough the schedule has been this year. But I think the one thing that's let them down a little bit is their attack, or at least their lack of a consistent goal scorer. Obviously, Timo Werner has not shown the kind of form that we were used to seeing at Chelsea, but he was really very central to Leipzig's attacking play throughout his time there, and he was their go-to goal scorer. They've scored 16 fewer goals than at this stage last season. They have the 4th best attack in the division. Their shots per game are actually down, although they're still very good at 15.5. They are down from 16.2. And yeah, they lack that clinical finisher. They should have actually scored 4 more goals according to XG than they have, which is the second biggest underperformance in the division behind Mainz. So take from that what you will. They definitely do lack a kind of thoroughbred goal scorer in that side. I think the kind of closest they have to kind of out and out centre forward is Yusuf Poulsen, and he was always very much the foil to Werner, wasn't he? So their 3 main strikers have underperformed. So yeah, Poulsen, 7 league goal contributions in 19 games. Sorloth hasn't really kicked on, has he, since signing for them? 2 goal contributions in 20 games. And Hwang Hee-chan, although he's come a lot closer in the last few games, I think he hit the post against Liverpool, didn't he? Had a very good chance against Hertha Berlin as well. He hasn't registered a goal contribution yet. To be fair to him, he hasn't really been given a chance, has he, by Nagelsmann yet? Only 202 league minutes since signing for them. So yeah, he'll be hoping he can kind of keep playing himself into the side, and I'm sure the chances will continue to come for him. But yeah, at the moment, Marcel Sabitzer is their top scorer with 5 goals. He also has 2 assists. He scored 3 goals in the last 5 games, so he's really been their kind of talismanic figure this season, hasn't he? And the goals, to be fair, have been spread around the side, like the likes of Dani Olmo, the likes of Christopher Nkunku. There are a lot of players on the kind of 4-goal mark. So it's not like they necessarily need a 20-goal a season striker, considering how well that team functions as a whole, and players like Nordi Mukiele getting in on the action, players like Angelino, when you've got your kind of wing backs also producing a lot in the final third, then yeah, it does take the onus away from having to have that consistent goal scorer. But it would be nice for a player to get between 10 and 15 goals by the end of the season. I think you do kind of need that to win a title. But back to Sabitzer though, because he has been just immense for them this season, hasn't he? He has been for a few seasons, but I think this season he's really kind of come to the fore. 3.6 tackles, interceptions per 90. He's taken 2.3 shots a game as well, producing around 1.3 chances, running at about 0.4 expected goals and assists per 90, which, considering the amount of defensive work he does, is incredibly impressive. So yeah, I think he'll be key in this game, as he has been in a lot of games. And yeah, I think I'd expect RB Leipzig to win this one, considering Mönchengladbach's form, which has not been good at all.
Yeah, no, it hasn't been good at all. And there's lots of speculation around Leipzig at the moment. Not just their manager Nagelsmann, who's being heavily linked with the Spurs job, if Mourinho is fired, which I think is probably quite unlikely considering his pay packet and how much it would cost to fire him, to get rid of him, and the fact they're in that Carabao Cup final as well. I think Mourinho could be, I'd wait and see if I was Daniel Levy effectively. But they're also linked with Skriniar and Sabitzer, as I wrote about in Euro Transfer Talk this week, and it feels like those sort of moves that will really propel the club to the next level are quite dependent on where they finish in the league, and they're just not going to come, I think, if they finish in ninth. Same with Nagelsmann. I don't know why you'd swap RB Leipzig, who have, made it to the last 16 at least in the Champions League in the last 2 years, for a club who, seem like they're sort of not quite sure what they are at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Leipzig over the next year or so. But Henry, let's move on to their opponents in Gladbach, because it hasn't been great for them at all recently.
No, not at all. I just should say, people should check out Sabitzer's goal from last week. Like the ridiculous, long, the dip on that ball. It was every now and then you see a goal which is like so unique and different to anything you've seen, and that's one of them. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, Gladbach. They were fifth after 18 games, just 4 points behind Die Bullen, having only lost 3 of their games up to that point. But it's kind of dropped off a cliff since then, isn't it? I mean, played 4, drawn 2, lost 2. They've only scored 3, and conceded 5 as well, and that's dropped them down to 8th. Get this, they're 14 points off Leipzig, 9 points off Eintracht Frankfurt in 4th. So, I mean, you've got... I'd say qualification for the next year's Champions League is almost out the window in that front. It doesn't look like they're going to get through this one either. They're comfortably beaten 2-0 by Manchester City. I mean, I don't know if anyone gave them really any other chance in that. They had 3 shots, 1 on target, City's 9. I mean, City look just too good for them. And it's funny, we talked about cursed clubs. I think there's a running joke in Gladbach that they always draw City in the Champions League. I think in every group stage they've had them. I think they're quite funny about that on Twitter, saying how unlucky are they. But yeah, looks like City will be ending their progress this season too. And overall, that means they've only won 4 of their last 13 league games. And the only thing they've got going for them is this DFB Pokal quarter-final against Borussia Dortmund, which is on Tuesday, actually. So that'll be a pretty good game to tune into. But, I mean, knowing Dortmund, that could go anyway, quite frankly. And their stats, they're pretty middling, aren't they? They're pretty like sort of down-the-middle team. 7th best attack, according to goals scored, and the 9th best defence. XG rates them as the 7th best side in Germany. So they're kind of where you'd expect them to be, really, which is a bit of a shame. They've underwhelmed in the games you'd expect them to win. But what I find really weird is they've always performed in like the bigger games. Certainly in the Bundesliga this season. I mean, they were so impressive when they beat Bayern recently. They've also been beaten Dortmund. But then again, they've lost to FC Köln. And like you said, McCubs lost to Mainz, who clearly, enjoying playing the big sides at the moment. And obviously they're losing Marco Rosa this summer. It's confirmed that he's going to go to Borussia Dortmund. So yeah, they're also going to be in a bit of a transition period too. Another player being Florian Neuhaus, who's being linked with big moves away. He's been one of their real standout players, hasn't he? He's been excellent this season. Scored some really beautiful goals. Looks like a lot of English sides are quite interested in him. I'll be interested to see the value there. And I don't think the players actually denied it in the press. He's done one of those kind of shifty, we'll see what happens. Right now I'm focused on Mönchengladbach, but we'll see in the future kind of interviews, which is never a good sign. But if we look at if we look at their stats, similar to Leipzig, they're just really lacking for goals at the moment. It's a real surprise too if we consider how exciting that attack was last season. Alisson Playa, he's only got 3 goals. Breel Mbelo, he's only got 3. And then Marcus Thuram, 3 goals and 1 assist in 17 games. This is a guy who's just elevated himself into the French national side. You really do expect more of that. I mean, that's a pretty poor return, 9 goals across those 3 players. And as a result, the onus has kind of been on their 32-year-old attacker Lars Stindl. I think we wrote about him in a 10 recently as kind of one of these unappreciated gems. He's had to step up. He's played like 9 in the 10 on the left. He's responded with 10 goals and 5 assists in 22 league games. Also 4 goal contributions in the Champions League as well. I should mention, they only got through in the Champions League due to Inter Milan's inability to beat Shakhtar Donetsk, wasn't it? It was a sort of awful game. Remember that one. But yeah, Stindl, he's been performing at the top level for a while now, and continued to do so again for his side. 2.5 shots, 2 key passes, 0.5 dribbles, some excellent numbers, and they should expect more of the rest of the players in that side. Like I said, Gladbach, a kind of a lost season. You got to look at the DFB Pokal as the only thing they can really go for at the moment, or at least try and hold on to those Europa League spots, because that looks as good as it's get. Like we said, there could be a lot of changes in that squad in the summer, players coming and go. They're another side that kind of suffer from the plundering. Often their best talents get nicked, like we saw at Leverkusen. But yeah, I just, on this occasion, certainly looking at the Champions League midweek, I saw more in Leipzig's performance against Liverpool than I did and Gladbach against City. And I personally just think there's more kind of a cohesiveness to that Leipzig side, so I'm probably going to go for them with a victory on this occasion, but probably like a tight victory, or 1-0 or something like that.
Fair enough. We have it in writing. Henry's going 1-0. And actually, one of you, I think he's Ibrahim Hashim, got in touch with us with the leaderboard for our predictions, which was awesome. And he gave like 4 points for a correct score, 2 for a correct result or something. And McCubs was ahead in the leaderboard. Of course. I think 3 points ahead of me and Henry. So yeah, McCubs, Mystic Mike leading the way once again. What's your score prediction for this one?
I'm going to go a bit more comprehensive. I'm going to say 3-1 to RB Leipzig.
Oh, there we go. I mean, the only thing counting against Leipzig at the moment is their kind of, injury list. I mean, they're quite established injuries, to be fair. Konrad Lehmer's out with that ankle injury, which kept him out since August. One of my favourite players from last year. I was kept on banging on about him in this show. It was getting kind of dull, to be honest. But yeah, he's been out since August. Emil Forsberg's out with a knee injury. He's missed 6 games. And Szoboszlai, who got signed in January from under Arsenal's nose, hasn't been fit to make his debut yet, which is a real shame. But he looks like he's being groomed to maybe replace Marcel Sabitzer if he leaves this summer. For Gladbach, they have no major injuries to their senior players, and Leipzig definitely have had the better of it in recent times. They've only lost 1 of their 9 meetings in all competitions in their history. Obviously, Leipzig, being not that established as a football club, have only met them 9 times. And they've won 5 of those meetings as well. But that solitary defeat in that time did come back in October when they lost 1-0 to a Hannes Wolf strike. So Gladbach, as Henry mentioned, they've beaten Leipzig, Dortmund and Bayern. So maybe there's a chance, but I just feel like they've kind of collapsed at just the wrong time. That speculation around who's going to take over hasn't made it much easier. Their manager's obviously leaving, speculation around some of their key players in Neuhaus, Zakaria as well. So it's a really difficult time for Gladbach. I'm going to go with 2-0 to Leipzig on this one, but guys, we want to know your score predictions. Get them in the comments down below, and let's move on to our quickfire question. Our quickfire question this week comes in from Dylan_E_07, and he's asked what are the most underperforming, or who are the most underperforming sides or players this season? Henry, who are you putting in the loser corner?
I actually think we've discussed some of the names. Sorloth, really disappointing, a lot of that Gladbach lineup, but actually, Nice in France, I've been really, really disappointed in them. It's a bit of a left field shout, but they're in 16th this season. Absolute stinker. They've lost 5 of their last 6 games at the moment. They're only 6 points above like the relegation playoff spot. If you look at some of the players in their squad, Armin Gori, that was a really good signing, but they've got Jeff Renard, Schneiderlin, Kasper Dolberg. I'm not really sure if he's kicking on. Kind of expect a lot from him, and you just look at that side and you'd hope that they'd be challenging for more, and they've kind of fallen by the wayside. I could include Marseille as well. But yeah, I'd say Nice, compared to like some of the standard, it's certainly the lower half of the French league table. You'd really hope for more from that.
I love it. You always bring the niche shouts. Kasper Dolberg's an interesting one because around 2016-17 he was such a hot prospect at Ajax and he hasn't really kicked on since. And obviously Nice have gone through that sort of time with Balotelli, they've gone through that time with Dolberg. They kind of need an established goal scorer in their side. McCubs, who has been your sort of most disappointing player or side?
Tough. I think in terms of sides, there's a few actually. In France, Marseille have obviously had an awful season, haven't they? In a season when the Liga and title races, the Liga and title is very much up for grabs. And also in Italy, I think Atalanta, although they've still been very impressive at points, they've really lacked the consistency that they had last season, haven't they? Again, at a time when the Serie A title is more open than it has been in years. So I think fans of Atalanta will maybe be a bit disappointed that they haven't kicked on from last year, and obviously all that stuff with Papu Gomez was very disruptive, wasn't it? That's a pretty sad kind of series of events in Atalanta's kind of recent history. I think those are the two standout. Obviously, Barcelona and Real Madrid, have underperformed. You'd expect it with Barcelona, not so much expected with Real Madrid, like you were saying, injuries and whatnot. But yeah, in terms of the teams, those are the ones that come to mind. And then there are a number of players within those sides, especially Real and Barca, who haven't been very good this season.
Yeah, fair enough. I think they're all sensible shouts. I'm going to go for a player actually, and it's a bit harsh because I feel like it's been down to circumstances. He's been injured. He's also got COVID, but Paulo Dybala just really sort of non-event this year. Hasn't been utilised at all by Andrea Pirlo. I feel like he just needs to move this summer. He needs a new challenge. There's been so much speculation around his future now. What is he, 26, 27? He should be hitting his peak. And actually, he hasn't really kicked on since a couple of years ago where he had that awesome campaign. So Paulo Dybala I've been slightly disappointed with. Henry, I could hear you were about to interject with something.
I was just looking at the Bundesliga table, and we talked about Hertha Berlin being like really biggest disappointment of 2020. They are in genuine danger of at least having to go into that relegation playoff, if not outright relegation. They've lost 5 of the last 6 games again. They haven't had them one in ages. They're only on 18 points so far. That is awful, isn't it? And even Hoffenheim, they're in 11th. They've been kind of middling this season, won a few, but Hertha, yeah, they're having a real stinker, which could have some serious consequences, couldn't it?
Yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed the show though, all you viewers. I feel like we've been quite negative today. We've been absolutely doomsayers. We've been talking about cursed clubs, flops, Gladbach falling apart. I suppose Leipzig, brought some happiness to this show. But yeah, I hope this puts you in a good mood for the week, and I hope you have a great weekend wherever you are watching from. And McCubs, if they've enjoyed watching this, what should they go and watch now?
Well, yeah, if you want to hear more about Leverkusen and the kind of their kind of history of developing talent, then we did a video on them a couple of weeks ago, so go and show that some love. Bit of a niche one, so yeah, hasn't maybe had the viewing figures that some of our other videos have had, so we'd really appreciate it if you went over and commented on it, give it a like, because that always helps us out. So yeah, there's that. And then if you also haven't checked it out, Sam Obasiki's fantastic documentary on South London, and the talent factory that is, south of the river in London. Go and check that out on the weekend. It features interviews with Joe Gomez, Callum Hudson-Odoi. So yeah, it's a really big project that took a long time and a lot of hard work and love went into it. So yeah, go and check that out as well.
Absolutely, it's absolutely class. Yeah, some great interviews, some great moments, great documentary. Go check it out. Henry, anything from you?
Yeah, well, on a more positive note, I guess the podcast this week was looking at kind of the big title races across Europe. As we've said, that is something it is a super exciting year for Premier League aside, all across Europe. It's going to be really intriguing. Could go to the last minute. So I think it was Pat and Chris talking about that stuff as well. And we've got more scout reports and 10s coming out on the channel. Give those some love on Euro Football Daily, because we put a lot of effort into those, and hopefully you guys appreciate them too.
Perfect. Thanks very much, guys. Have a great weekend. We'll catch you next time. Bye.